Aziraphale swept into the bookshop, his countenance marred by an uncharacteristic agitation, a whirlwind of disquiet swirling about him. As his gaze landed upon Crowley sat ensconced amidst the musty tomes alongside Muriel, a sense of relief washed over him. He exhaled a breath that he hadn't realized he'd been holding, his hurried steps slowing to a measured stroll as he approached them. As another deafening clap of thunder tore through the skies and a violent rumble sent a book crashing to the floor, Crowley glanced up, an exaggerated look of surprise on his face. "Angel, what brings you back so soon from your heavenly vacation?" Ignoring the sarcasm, Aziraphale wasted no time. "Crowley, we've been deceived. Raphael isn't in Nepal, nor has he ever been there." Crowley raised an eyebrow. "Oh, is he not? Fancy that." Aziraphale paced anxiously, wringing his hands together. "It's not a laughing matter, my dear. I received a report from the Seraphim." He implored as he repeated, "They are certain that Raphael is not only not there, but he has indeed never even set foot in Nepal." Crowley leaned in, intrigue evident in his voice. "Well, we did suspect the Metatron's hand in this. I think that little deception offers proof to our suspicions, doesn't it?" "I concur," Aziraphale replied, scanning the bookshop anxiously. "Where are Nina and Maggie?" Crowley intimated a hidden layer in his words with a subtle adjustment of his sunglasses to reveal his serpentine eyes. "Let's just say I may have mentioned Raphael's imminent arrival to them." Feeling out of step, Aziraphale probed. "You told them Raphael is en route here?" In a languid matter-of-fact tone Crowley explained, "On my way here, I may have stopped off at the coffee shop," he began, twirling his glasses in an extended hand as if encouraging his words to unfurl like winding a clockwork toy, and shared something along the lines of, "No need to worry, Raphael will handle everything." Realization dawned on Aziraphale. "Ah, I see." His eyes widened as he deciphered the hidden message. "Quite right. We must keep the humans out of this mess best we can. But we are still without Raphael," Crowley stated as he reclined in his chair. Setting his glasses aside in resigned contemplation, he glanced out at the tumultuous sky. "Time is running out, Angel, and I fear we have precious little left." A heavy silence settled upon them. The weight of the world's impending doom seemed to press on the very fabric of the shop, restricting the space they occupied. It was Muriel who finally broke their dark reverie, her voice filled with a desperate plea. "Surely there's something we can do." Muriel's appeal hung in the air as her eyes searched Crowley and Aziraphale, pleading for a glimmer of hope. In response, Crowley sighed in mordant agreement, his lips curling into a sardonic smile as he reached for a bottle with practiced nonchalance. "Yes," he agreed, the word heavy with irony, "toast the end of the world." He poured a glass for each of them. Defeated, and trapped in a world teetering on the brink of oblivion, they settled in their seats amidst the musty bookshop's eclectic collection. Outside the tranquility of the bookshop, the heavens continued to roar menacingly, offering a somber dissonance to the occasion. The intermittent tremors caused the shop's lights to flicker, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Their ghostly gesticulations appearing to ridicule the trio's stillness, deepening the already portentous atmosphere. Muriel's voice quaked with the weight of desperation. "I've only been here on Earth for a few minutes, and it's been great," she began, her eyes gazing at the shelves filled with knowledge and wonder. "There's so much more to see and do that I haven't experienced. Surely there's something we can do to save it all." Searching for a breadcrumb of hope she offered, "Is it worth trying the key again?" Her gaze swept across the room, catching the visible slump of shoulders. Observing the weight of doubt settling upon them, she felt compelled to press the notion further. "The half-miracle you performed with Gabriel was incredibly powerful, more powerful than the highest of archangels. So, surely," she paused tentatively, "surely, it should work when it only took one archangel last time." Aziraphale lifted his gaze from the glass nestled in his hand, his expression contemplative yet tinged with doubt. "Yes, in theory, but we've already tried, to no avail." He conceded, reaching out to the figurine, his fingers tracing patterns absent-mindedly on the weather-beaten surface. Raphael is a truly formidable archangel in his own right. He would have been well-versed and instructed when he orchestrated that miracle. As for us, we're merely left to speculate. Crowley remained silent for a moment, golden eyes locked with Aziraphale's, searching for answers his optimistic heart could not bear to relinquish. Sitting his glass aside, Crowley shifted his frame forward, forearms resting on his knees, poised as if undecided whether to dive into the carpet or utter a fervent prayer. Finally he offered, "Do you reckon it had anything to do with us?" His voice carrying a rare note of vulnerability. "We're not quite the duo we were before all this, not really. Do you think there might be something holding us back from our miracle working in harmony, like it did before?" Aziraphale's response came swiftly, his voice carrying a soothing assurance as he gently shook his head. "No, my dear friend, surely not. We've forgiven each other and moved forward. I dare say there's anything more we could conceivably do." He continued to roll the artifact contemplatively in his palm as he sunk back in the plush armchair. Weariness etched lines into his face, as he let his feet take center stage of his unfocused gaze. After a moment's pause, the shadows lifted from Aziraphale's countenance. He leaned forward abruptly, the motion nearly thrusting him to the edge of his seat as if the urgency of his thoughts propelled him. His eyes alight with a newfound determination. "What is it?" Crowley inquired, his head tilting with a curious inclination. Aziraphale rose with newfound resolve, his posture exuding determination, and Crowley followed suit, mirroring his actions, his inquisitive gaze unmasked as he searched Aziraphale for the significance behind their sudden flurry of activity. Aziraphale spoke with a hopeful yet searching tone, as if questioning the validity of his own words. "I don't think I ever truly forgave myself." "Forgave?" Crowley's voice curled like a wisp of smoke, skepticism etched across his face as he arched an incredulous eyebrow, the declaration appearing to evoke a profound sense of disdain. As he turned his gaze back to Aziraphale, his expression shifted to genuine intrigue as he tried to unravel the meaning behind Aziraphale's declaration. Before Crowley could utter another word, Aziraphale stepped forward, his movements unwavering as he drew in, pausing only when their breath combined in the intimate space. He raised his fingers tenderly to Crowley's cheek. In that arrested moment their eyes locked in a gaze where their souls bathed in one another. Aziraphale pressed into Crowley, gingerly brushing their lips together in invitation, searching for something deeper, before they finally met in a kiss that bore the weight of longing and discovery. The world around them seemed to melt into insignificance, but when they finally parted, their breaths ragged, they found solace in the ensuing silence within their relaxed embrace. A soft, enigmatic smile graced Aziraphale's lips as he whispered, "I love you," his words a tender embrace, "for everything you are, for all you've been and will be, I love you. And I forgive myself for the times I failed to honor that simple truth." Crowley's serpent eyes sparkled with a mixture of surprise and longing. His voice, a velvet murmur tinged with mischief, delicately wove through the charged moment. "Well then, that was a thing." He paused, his gaze locked onto Aziraphale's, as if assessing the situation with great care. "Shall we give it another go?" Still regaining their breath, Aziraphale extended the figurine he held in his hand, silently inviting Crowley to join him. They stood side by side once more, locking their eyes on the small, unassuming key that they held between them, burdened as though the fate of the world rested upon their shoulders. The certainty of it all compounded the weight of gravity in this moment, forcing their knees to soften as they planted their feet on the time-worn carpet. Aziraphale whispered, "Do you think this is going to work, my dear?" "Well, Angel, we're about to find out. Time's running out, and we can't do anything else but give it our best shot." Crowley purred, exuding an aura of confidence, cutting through Aziraphale's uncertainty like a hot knife through butter. Muriel held her breath in anticipation whilst Crowley and Aziraphale began the miracle with a determined resolve, fingers brushing against the effigy's surface as they poured all their energy and hope into the ancient artifact. As they held their concentration, the skies above continued to darken, and the ground sustained its trembling protest. But as they persisted, they could sense that this time, something was different. The artifact, once lifeless and cold, started to come alive in their hands, glowing as if infused with divine power. Sparks of light began to dance along its surface and the air around them crackled with an otherworldly energy. As they maintained their concentration, the effigy's radiance intensified, exploding with light as a blinding brilliance erupted from the stone figurine. In that blinding moment, the once foreboding firmament that reverberated with deafening portents moments ago, gave way to blue skies, and the trembling earth grew still to a deafening peacefulness. Once past its zenith, the artifact's illumination gradually subsided, restoring the vision of the bookshop and its appurtenances. As they reconnected with their surroundings, they witnessed a tall and radiant figure emerge before them. With silvery, dove-grey wings, unmistakable feline protrusions resting against his full, dark lips, and a dancer's grace in his deportment, it was undeniably Raphael who stood before them. Crowley and Aziraphale exchanged astonished glances, their voices momentarily hushed in bewilderment as they beheld the Archangel before them. Aziraphale inched forward, his voice shuddering with astonishment as he beheld the elusive angel of his fruitless searches. "Oh dear Raphael, we've been scouring all over for you, but I must confess, I never imagined this." His eyes explored Raphael beseechingly for answers. With a deep sigh, Raphael acknowledged the truth that had become clear to him over the ages. "I apprehend that it hath been my divine destiny and appointed purpose to stand as the guardian of this earth, to be the key to shield it from the malevolent forces that doth threaten its very existence. It doth pain me to confess," Raphael continued, as he moved with such a grace and remarkable lightness in his step that he appeared to glide among them, "that the miracle I wrought on the last occasion was not sufficient to achieve its intended end." He paused, his gaze falling upon the ethereal icon that had absorbed his energy and bound him to this mortal realm. The effigy, in its insatiable thirst for power, didst engulf my entire being, confining me within its grasp since that fateful moment. His voice quivered with regret. Having regained his composure following this lament and the unsettling return from his incarceration, Raphael fixed an unwavering gaze on the trio before him, his eyes filling with an unyielding determination. With a furrowed brow, he embarked on a relentless interrogation, demanding clarity on recent affairs and their involvement in hastening the arrival of the Second Coming. After a brief recounting of events, Aziraphale advanced and cleared his throat, clutching his hands with apprehension. "I believe," he concluded hesitantly, "that the Metatron might be the true architect behind this." Raphael inclined his head inquisitively. "The Metatron," he mused, "hath ever been entrusted with the divine plan. But to quicken the Second Coming, to disturb the natural order, there must be a cause." His words held a subtle undercurrent of concern. Aziraphale nodded, his expression grave. "Indeed, Raphael. Although I fear that the Metatron's designs may not align with the ineffable plan." The bookshop filled with a solemn tension as Raphael's stance shifted, his presence radiating an imposing air of great authority. "Verily, it is of utmost importance," he declared, "that we do unveil the veracity of the Metatron's intentions and take action, if it be requisite. For the destiny of heaven and earth doth sway in precarious balance, and it is our sacred duty to safeguard the hallowed order of creation." With a graceful pivot towards a void in their assembly, Raphael commenced a deft and authoritative motion, raising his outstretched hand in a fluid, artistic flourish. The air crackled with divine energy as he summoned the Metatron. In an instant, the Metatron appeared before the Archangel, the normally composed countenance replaced by an expression of shock and awe. The Metatron knelt before Raphael in a respectful greeting, unable to meet the Archangel's piercing gaze. As the Metatron regained his stance, Raphael's voice, commanding and unyielding, rang out. "Expound thyself," he demanded. "Why have you set in motion the Second Coming? What doth grant thee the authority to pass judgment upon mankind?" The very weight of his words resonated through the room. "A great deal of time has passed since your disappearance, Raphael," the Metatron began, their voice laced with celestial authority and conviction. "In this time, we have witnessed the mounting imperfections of humanity, a surging darkness that lurks within the human soul. If we continue to turn a blind eye to the evil that exists within their kind, we'd meritoriously be assisting in perpetuating the cycle of suffering. Only through self-reflection and a genuine desire for change can humans hope to rise above the darkness that threatens to consume them, and it is only by initiating the second coming that this can be set into motion. Raphael's eyes bore into the Metatron. Heaven on earth, thou dost proclaim? His voice resonated with a stern command as he continued, it was never meant to be so. The balance must be upheld. Earth is a realm for humans to craft their own choices, to learn, and to grow. Though still unsettled by Raphael's appearance, the Metatrons stood their ground. It was a grave mistake to halt proceedings eons ago, they confessed, eyes piercing darkly into Raphael with determination. We now find ourselves at an inexorable crossroads in human history, a precipice from which we must find the strength to confront the shadows and strive for a world where love and compassion prevail. We can no longer sit idly by. Action must be taken to awaken the dormant light within their hearts and once again prove that humanity can be worthy of the divine grace that surrounds them. The Metatron paused with a glare consumed with bitterness and regret. It should never had gotten this far. A profound understanding sparked in Raphael's eyes, as the weight of the Metatron's inadvertent admission hung in the air with palpable menace. He confronted the Metatron with an inauspicious aura that eclipsed his former calm demeanor. Dost thou verily proclaim thyself the author of the occurrences in the land of Indus? His words dripped with accusation as he infused a steely edge into his tone. Didst thou bear the guilt for the souls departed? Didst thou hold the key to mine incarceration within yon effigy for countless millennia? Everyone in the room, even the Metatron, seemed to recoil from the ominous shift in atmosphere, as if the very air had grown too thick to comfortably breathe. Realizing the gravity of the indictment, the Metatron shrank away from Raphael's visage, shedding the usual aura of dominating authority, and pleaded, it was necessary. The Almighty was displeased with the wicked behavior of the humans. I couldn't stand by. Raphael cut off the Metatron with a thunderous response. Didst thou deem it thy providence to mend the wounds? He paused, allowing the words to settle, as all present recognized his reputation as a skilled healer, which was encapsulated by the very meaning of his name, God's healer. His tone dripped with a righteous fury as he continued, thy providence, thou didst believe. He reiterated, his words reverberated through the room, causing the walls to shudder in response, and pray, for what reason dost thou now assume the mantle to herald the second coming? By what divine authority dost thou claim this right? The Metatron, despite the mounting pressure, clung to their cause with unyielding determination. But there's so much suffering, so much chaos. We are only trying to bring order and harmony to this world. Aziraphale couldn't help but interject to pierce the mounting enmity, his voice tinged with worry. But at what cost, Metatron? Free will is a gift. Without it, humanity loses its very essence. You can't just impose your will upon them. It's against the rules, even for angels. Crowley affirmed, maintaining his cool composure as he stepped beside the angel, his eyes firmly locked onto the Metatron. With accusation cast from all directions in the room, the Metatron's resolve seemed to waver, a flicker of doubt dancing across their features. After a moment's hesitation, their determination solidified as they refuted, it's the only way to ensure a better future. Humans can no longer be trusted to make the right choices. Thou hast strayed from thy true purpose, Raphael declared with profound sadness. The essence of heaven is not to govern, but to lead, to kindle, and to proffer love and hope. Thou hast deviated from the divine path. Raphael's countenance transformed to a stern resolve as he continued, thou hast no jurisdiction to summon forth such a course of action. Thou shalt be sent to the Empyrean and judged in the presence of the Almighty for thy transgressions against his creation. Though the Metatron attempted to voice their protest, a simple gesture from Raphael transported them back to heaven in a fleeting flash of light. With the imminent peril expunged, Raphael turned his attention back to Crowley and Aziraphale, his gaze once filled with urgency, now softened, brimming with gratitude, and his tone reverted to its characteristic soothing power. I thank thee for thy valor in unveiling the truth. I shall ensure that the balance is restored. Pray, is there aught thou dost require of me ere I take my leave? Crowley remarked insolently, I'd rather fancy being left alone, if it's all the same to you. He slipped his hands in his pockets, adopting his usual devil-may-care attitude in an artful portrayal of rebellious indifference. Raphael responded to Crowley's defiant remark with a calming smile, acknowledging the demon's directness, before elegantly shifting his gaze to Aziraphale. And what is it, dear Aziraphale, he inquired with a softness, that thou dost yearn for? Aziraphale's cheeks flushed slightly, and he replied shyly, well, the Metatron did make me the supreme archangel. Raphael's eyes held a gentle warmth as he prompted with a tender, nevertheless. Aziraphale hesitated before admitting, all I truly desire is my bookshop and the life I've built here with my dearest friends. With an acknowledging smile, Raphael turned his attention to Muriel, his demeanor filled with genteel curiosity as he conveyed a silent invitation for her to share her thoughts. Muriel glanced tentatively at Aziraphale as she answered, well, I would rather like to stay here as well, if that's okay. Raphael's raised eyebrows silently invited Aziraphale to comment. With a warm smile, Aziraphale replied, of course, Muriel. I'd certainly be more than lucky to have you here. Satisfied with their answers, Raphael nodded. Verily, that doth sound most auspicious. I discern no cause to meddle with this tranquil equilibrium at this time. He declared amiably. I deem I have much toil afore me. I shall bid thee good day for the nonce. And with those parting words, he eased into a soft plie before transforming into a radiant stream of light, ascending back to the celestial realms. Crowley, Aziraphale, and Muriel were left standing in the bookshop. The abrupt return to tranquility and the vanishing celestial presence left them momentarily speechless. The once tumultuous atmosphere had given way to an almost overwhelming quietude, and they stood there, frozen in its embrace. Well, it appears he has a considerable measure of catching up to accomplish. Aziraphale sighed, his words gently drifting into the oppressive silence of the room. Dothn't he just? Agreed Crowley dryly as he stood sentinel at the bookshop's window, his eyes locked on the distant horizon. It was as if he were methodically consigning the evening's tumultuous events to some far-off, ethereal ledger, meticulously checking each worry into the custody of an unseen force as he relinquished his concerns. Angel? He called out in a distracted murmur. Bemused, Aziraphale responded, his voice tinged with a hint of unease, yes, my dear. What's troubling you? Crowley turned to face Aziraphale, his expression pensive as he stroked his chin, as though wrestling with his thoughts. We've been talking about the icon, the figurine, as the key, haven't we? The scroll used those terms interchangeably, didn't it? Aziraphale's interest piqued, replied yes, indeed. But what if the key and the icon were in fact, Crowley tentatively suggested, two entirely separate things? Aziraphale's features shadowed, uncertainty playing across his face as he tried to grasp this notion. His countenance shifted as the idea caught in his mind. Wrestling with the implications, his brow furrowed before refocusing on Crowley, his tone tinged with curiosity. What are you suggesting? Well, Raphael sacrificed himself when he engaged the artifact. He stared poignantly at Aziraphale, waiting for confirmation to continue. Yes, quite, Aziraphale replied. Raphael did mention he lacked enough power, which is why it consumed him. True. But I'm not entirely sure that makes sense. Crowley nodded, punctuating his uncertainty with a yes but gesture, his finger poised in a quizzical manner. He's not just any celestial being, he's exceptionally gifted. Maybe not a linguistic virtuoso, but still, undeniably powerful. So, what if the artifact itself is the artifact? And, what if the true key is the act of sacrifice? What if the term key being a term of unlocking, could have been translated as, let's say, payment? He suggested, adding, just for the sake of a hypothetical discussion. Aziraphale raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Crowley flashed a wicked grin. "Humour me," he retorted, offering a theatrical shrug of a well-practiced bawbee. Aziraphale's visage brightened with realization as an understanding washed over him. Yet, his enlightenment faltered as he inquired, "Ah, my dear friend, but it appears that we were not ensnared by the key. Certainly we would have been consumed upon our initial attempt. Furthermore, I can assure you, we most certainly were not subjected to any sacrificial proceedings." "Maybe we were," Crowley ventured, as an uncharacteristic sheepishness washed over him. "Well, I was holding the artifact in the vault, you know, when we were at the museum," he admitted, his voice faltering. Aziraphale completed Crowley's thought, a warm smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You performed a sacrificial act by offering yourself in my defense when you attempted to thwart Shax's attack." "Sure," Crowley replied casually, pausing thoughtfully before continuing. "The first time we gave that key a go, it's possible the payment wasn't entirely settled, stalling it from working." He mused. His eyes briefly shifted towards Aziraphale, who was attentively focused on Crowley, encouraging him to continue. "But then after we tried to use the icon. After that. You were holding that thing when you made a sort of sacrifice, you know, when you proclaimed," Crowley trailed off, stumbling over his words. "You angels might call it a selfless act, bearing your feelings. There was a price for us, in a way, when you said," his voice wavered once more, his gaze darting around the room as if searching for the right words. "That I love you." Aziraphale confirmed, his voice filled with tenderness, as he observed his friend struggling. He stepped closer to Crowley, his hand resting gently on the demon's chest. "It's quite possible, my dear, that there is indeed some veracity in that theory." Crowley paused, his eyes fixed on Aziraphale's hand, as if savoring the warmth of the touch. With a hint of uncertainty he placed his own hand on top, with a glint of inner playfulness dancing in his eyes as he studied Aziraphale before he withdrew, a subtle smile lingering on his lips. Seeing Crowley's tumult ease, Aziraphale turned to Muriel with determination in his eyes, holding the ancient artifact aloft. "We ought to locate a safe haven for this, my dear. Perhaps it would be safer to return it to Raphael," Muriel suggested. "Good thinking, Muriel," Aziraphale concluded with a nod of approval. "Maybe we should pop this in your hiding place in the meantime." As Aziraphale carefully closed the hidden cupboard door, the mechanism clicking securely into place, Crowley's gaze ignited with a mischievous spark. "I dare say," he drawled in his unmistakable manner, "this calls for an exceptionally alcoholic breakfast at the Ritz." Aziraphale responded with a twinkle of delight in his eyes. "Oh, that does sound utterly divine." Muriel, who had lingered quietly in the corner, interjected with tentative enthusiasm. "Breakfast, huh? Great." Crowley's head snapped with abrupt irritation toward Muriel, his visage contorting into an exasperated snarl. Then, with an air of resigned nonchalance, he dismissively waved his hand. "Fine, fine," he grumbled, begrudgingly extending the invitation to her. "You as well. Let's go." With their reluctant consensus secured, the trio departed from the bookshop. Crowley, muttering under his breath, draped an arm around Muriel, his demeanor oddly resembling that of an exasperated elder sibling guiding a wayward younger one. As they exited the bookshop, Aziraphale rewarded Crowley with a gentle, approving smile as he locked the door, a wordless acknowledgement of Crowley's unexpected kindness toward Muriel. The gesture did not go unnoticed and was met with a theatrically disgusted snarl. Nonetheless, despite his stubborn objections, his arm remained firmly draped around Muriel's shoulders as they departed along the streets of London.